Oh, let's go over the new rake here that I bought. As many of you probably know what, regular 9-wheel rakes looks like from H&S, either it's a Sitrex or Columbia or whatever the variations they have. Biggest add-on that I've been waiting for is to have hydraulic adjust, and they finally came out with this several years ago. I mean, not only is it handier for transport, but for adjusting angle as on the fly now, a lot easier depending on conditions, and it's heavier. It's just plain and simple. It's heavier than a standard, like a 3-tire 9-wheel rake, with that big hoop going over the top, or a 2-wheel version with fixed hitch with a jack on the front. There's only 2 tires on the side. There's no tire in the middle then. But essentially, this by far is a little bit heavier because of the hitch, and also the beam here. I think it's pretty much the same beam here, but they have an additional extra piece here, and it seems to do a much better job of raking too, with just having a little more weight on here. And I guess compared to our other 9-wheel rake, this tubing, how it mounts the springs on here for down pressure adjustment, they actually have them fixed in here. It's not a usual, and normally that they did before, like in our last 2 9-wheel rakes we've owned over these years, is they usually just had a clamp going over the top of this pipe. But now it looks like on this version, this model anyways, hydraulic version, it's actually, they had a piece going through here now. So it's pretty much fixed. There's no adjustment here. You do pretty much all your adjustments on this chain. They got a super long chain on here, so they can actually hooks through here, which is this is what I wish our old 9-wheel rake had, which I think when it's like this now, because on our old 9-wheel rake, the chain didn't go all the way through. It was just long enough just to hook on the spring here and have some adjustment. Now they have it going through all the way here, all the way through, hooks on here. A little bit nicer system up here, but still their usual spring system here. Another difference is now for the lift cylinder here, the rake lift, it's actually a dual acting cylinder. Normally on our last 2 9-wheel rakes that we've ever owned, there was just a single acting cylinder, only one hydraulic hose, which did make it a lot handier. You can made it a lot handier. It's still pretty easy to hook up yet, but the other 9-wheel rake though, it was, probably a little bit handier to hook up just having one hydraulic hose. Now I got 4 hoses here now, one for the lift and one for the transport now. But yeah, I think it's all negated because the rake is actually a little bit better. So plus with double acting cylinder now, the way they have it designed here, I actually have some cylinder stops in here now. You notice this right now. I got 2 cylinder stops to take some of the, and I can take down pressure off through the cylinder now instead of, I have more fine tuning available now, being able to block the hydraulic cylinder now with cylinder stops now, instead of, because these are more or less fixed intervals here, so I can actually, because I thought there was, the chain link before, there wasn't enough down pressure. Where I have it now, I think there's too much down pressure, but it's kind of handy to have. I'm doing heavier crop, it's nice to have the extra down pressure then, but I just add in a couple cylinder stops to kind of just back it off just a little bit, just a teeny tiny little bit goes a long ways then. So, oh yeah, bigger, on our old 9-wheel rake, there was only 1 bolt in the middle for these kind of brake pads. It's for mainly going down the road, transport, like pulling behind a vehicle or something like that, going higher speeds. It prevents the wheel from getting out of control. Then these things just help it prevent it from turning. So it's pretty much right now it's get tightened up again. Oh, it's got to be loose. Yeah, see, it's loose. When you're working field, you want that loose so it this wheel spins free then. So, but for high speeds, you tighten these down, which they got 2 bolts now, so it's actually a little bit heavier system, which is nice. So, yeah, the biggest thing what makes this rake really nice is the hydraulic adjust. They got 2 cylinders, one for this rear tire back here for pivoting it, and also the hitch up here. That's how you get pretty much pulls. Doesn't even might stick out a little bit to the right, but it pretty much pulls straight behind the whatever vehicle or tractor or whatever. But here's the other cylinder here on the hitch here. Both cylinders are linked together through this valve block here, so it distributes oil to them. One thing I wish was a little different is sometimes it's a little weird. I guess it's kind of a quirk, but normally I want that reel to be sticking out further that way so I can stay on the left side of the windrow easily without skipping. Sometimes the way these cylinders retract back out to unfold it, it doesn't go right where I want it to, so I have to kind of finagle with it then as I'm going to hopefully get it to go, because this thing will actually unfold a lot further than what you want to, where it actually, the wheels will barely turn because they're so horizontal, or I should say so perpendicular to the tractor. So I kind of wish, I mean, our old rake is the same way too with the pin adjustments. It was the same way too, but I kind of wish there was a little bit differently, not necessarily for this cylinder. This cylinder is pretty much fine. I want this cylinder to retract as far as it will. But the only thing I wish was different is this back cylinder. I wish there was kind of you could limit it, how far it would retract to bring that tire over. Because I'd rather have that front end be furthermore to the right to not have a chance to get or not having to drive over a windrow than, the other way around. So I'd rather limit this thing while being able to retract that cylinder all the way to get it over to the right as far as possible. So there's really hard not to put, you really can't put cylinder stops in the area unless I weld something on here or something, some sort of beefy spacer here or something like that. But even then, you don't want to damage the cylinder either then. So I don't know. I wish they kind of had some sort of limit there to be able to do that, just so you can make it going from transport to field mode easier where you exactly had it before, But the way sometimes these cylinders work, they might be a little bit different than they were since you extend them and retract them. So I think that's the one big quirk about it, that you have to kind of finagle with it when you go back to field mode, but you get used to it. But it sure is nice being able to fold it up to get through gates and everything. And on the highway, I've really liked the hydraulic system up here. I think it's well worth the extra cost, for what we need it for. Maybe if you don't have as many acres, yeah, it's probably fine. But I say if you have a lot of tighter areas and whatnot, yeah, that hydraulic option it's probably a huge must. It's just so much simpler, easier to do stuff. I mean, that pretty much folds right up. So I did put extra weight back here like I've always done on our 9-wheel rakes. This is actually weights from our ACO tractor. We don't really use the weights much anymore since we've gotten more tractors, and plus that tractor has a loader on it most of the time anyway. So that's what usually add weights at the back of the rakes just to kind of keep it more planted. So because what these rakes kind of tend to do is kind of when you're going through heavy crop or uneven ground, this might slide over where it's not taking as much of a swipe. So having this extra weight back here helps keep that tire planted a little bit better to help keep it over. But just from using this year now, the rake being a little bit heavier, heavier frame and everything, it actually holds over quite a bit better. Of course, we put the aftermarket wind guards on for these. I think wind guards are like an absolute must, I guess, around here anyways. They just use heavy zip ties on here, piece of poly, and yeah, I think that's well worth it there too. So oh yeah, the jack is backwards. You notice how you crank clockwise to crank it up and counterclockwise to let the hitch down? Yeah, this jack is backwards. I don't know why it is. Sometimes I wonder if America's backwards sometimes, or if the other side of the world is backwards. I don't know. I think it goes both ways anyways. But anyways, so that's besides the point. Hitch on here versus our old 9-wheel rake is heavier. They have to compensate for the hydraulic hitch and whatnot. So the hitch, I think, is actually a little bit beefier. It's got a pivot point there up and down. But the one thing I don't like though is this here. It is not very wide. It is not very wide. There's not much of a gap there, which kind of sucks. My TS6 hitch, I use this rake on sometimes too, especially when I'm doing ditches, just for better stability. I like to use that tractor, but it barely fits in here. As you notice now, even though it is heavier than the last 9-wheel rake hitch, notice this paint here? is already chipped. Up here. And down here. See that? Yeah. Going up and down on even terrain with my tractor. I even used a narrower pin as well, just to give a little bit more play in there to allow for better going over better terrain to sharp angles and whatnot. But my TS6 hitch, I think, actually bent these things. They actually bent these things open a little bit. I don't know if you guys can maybe see it. Yeah, you might be able to see on the bottom. Yeah, you can see because that was straight. And you can see it now. It's actually been bent open a little bit. So that's a problem. This is way too narrow. Way too narrow of a hitch. It should be, it could be another 1/2 inch wider yet, opening here. Just to allow for various hitches to join up. But really, I don't mind having ball hitches. Our Rouse bar mowers have it. Our Rouse rake has a ball hitch. For haying, I guess, for uneven ground, ball hitches are by far superior. Yes, they could be a little more messy grease-wise and having to kind of maybe retrofit a hitch on here than too for a more stout ball hitch design. But I do prefer ball hitches for haying, just because sometimes the uneven ground you can go across, those ball hitches just allow for way more angles. Here's that pivot point here, so it can go up and down, but to a certain point, though. It's only to a certain limit where, you know, especially when you're going down like an approach or something like that, when I'm raking some highway ditches, going down an approach. I mean, I'm trying to be careful as I can. You know, I don't like to go up this, you know, super steep stuff, and I usually go off to the side when I can, or go up at an angle and whatnot. But sometimes there's certain places that just can't be helped. You have to do it. And when the tractor starts going down a steep hitch, you know, the hitch starts pulling down the hill, and this thing is still up on a high point. There's only so much it can give. So plus with the angle then too, you know, it just, the hitch can only compensate for so much there, and too much of an angle, that hitch just got bent open a little bit then. So I would say I'm been super happy with this rake, I guess. I haven't had, I guess, any quality control issues, unlike on our last rake. Like our last rake, we had loose wheel bolts, and when it arrived, good thing it was trailed up, but all the wheel bolts were loose, and a couple of the what do you call it, way it was designed. This is, yeah, well, it's kind of similar. I don't know if they probably are a little bit heavier, but these things here, they were cracking out down here on the last rake. I had to repair them. I think I probably had to repair half of them. They were bending, these things, but I think these have a little bit more metal here now. I think the welds are a lot better too on here than our last rake. So quality control wise on this rake is been way better. I don't think I've done one thing on here that's been something was wrong with the factory. I mean, the first thing I did before I pulled it home, I checked the wheel bolts. Everything was tight. So yeah, super long hose. I actually had to wrap it around here just to keep it. It's just so freaking long. The hoses, so I don't know what they're trying to hook up to, an articulated tractor or what. I mean, good grief, those hoses are long on this thing. It's ridiculous. So yeah, just kind of watching hoses here. Of course, they got a bend there and everything. These things aren't overly tight. I think there's actually give in here. The hoses can actually move. They're not getting squished. Keep an eye on this hose. I don't think it's rubbing there, but yeah, just kind of keep an eye on the hoses a little bit. But I think the hoses are good though. I wish I would have had it a while ago. It makes it easier where we don't have to use our 6-wheel rake as much now in some places, because I can fold it up now and get into places easier now, just more efficiently now, where I don't have to use this thing in certain places. I can kind of get an area done with this thing. I don't have to run down there and more with that thing. So, but yeah, I suppose. Oh yeah, of course it's got the hydraulic lock here for the lift. Lock it up via hydraulic, and you can also put a bolt in too. They actually had a bolt in here too. Once you had it locked up, throw a pin through here. It's just kind of a safety thing. It butts up against it. That's how it came from the factory too. So it's just kind of a safety thing. So throw a bolt or a pin there, just for extra precaution, along with the hydraulic lock. So, but the transport option, the only thing you can do is drop a pin back there, maybe to limit the the back cylinder, I guess, from moving, I suppose. But the front thing, I don't know. I don't think there is anything for this thing up here. It is relying on hydraulic pressure when it's unhooked to keep it steady. So, which it should be fine theoretically, unless you have a hose that gets cut, then you could have some issues then. But use something or a bunch of straps, going, load binders or something, straps going around the hitch here and going over here. You could keep it together, I suppose, as an extra safety precaution too. I suppose that would work just fine. But after using it a couple months, I would say it's got my stamp of approval. I like it. See, just a couple things on it, quirks that could get worked out. Hitch being a little bit wider, having kind of a limiter for that back cylinder. And yeah, that's, I think, mainly about it.